to episode 74 of the LOTD Pod, the Left of the Dial podcast. Bringing us in is The Time Worm by Richard Shirk. And joining me today as my co-host, this is Flick, and this is...
Richard Shirk in Oakland, California. And yes, thank you for playing The Time Worm. It's a spooky track from my new album, With Clairvoyance.
And you can find that many places, Amazon, Bandcamp, richardshirk.bandcamp.com. Richard, we are doing a late birthday celebration for one of our, I think, safe to say, heroes, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
So the music of Lou Reed, we will be exploring tonight, and I do mean exploring because we are going as much as we can off the beaten path, doing a deep dive into Lou Reed, staying away from the ones that you know, the Sweet Janes, the Rock and Rolls, Heroin, Satellite of Love, Perfect Day, and so on, and Walk on the Wild Side, of course.
You know, I'd like to just kind of provisionally give only this episode the title Excursions on a Wobbly Rail. If we could.
That's that you could title your playlist that, because we each have made a playlist. I have titled mine Suggested Reading with the spelling REEDING, and you can find that on our Spotify page, which is okay. So the podcast is LOTD Pod, as we're known currently. The Spotify playlist page, you would search Left of the Dial podcast to locate it.
Okay.
So
Thank
you. Bit of a trick.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. I all of your playlists are so in terms of all the people that I know in my life that are nuts about music, your level of specificity and thoroughness with your Spotify playlist is just off the chain, dude.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, and I basically do that for my own enjoyment. It's not, it's usually not for public consumption, although it can be. They're out there for anybody to enjoy. But basically, that's my own little obsessive, compulsive sort of thing, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, it could be worse.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I know I spent the past week trying to, like I went through pretty much the whole discography, especially like the lesser explored parts of it. Like I didn't really spend a whole lot of time even listening to the Velvet Underground at all this past week, because that stuff I definitely know by the back of my hand. But some lesser explored areas of the discography, the solo discography for sure. For instance, like Lulu, I have never listened to in my life until yesterday. But I felt like I needed to.
Can you explain for our listeners a little bit of a background about the album Lulu?
So Lulu was a collaboration between Lou Reed and Metallica, which I think came out. What year did that come out? Do you know? I will take a look.
If I had to guess, I'd say like 2012.
Yeah, let me take a look, and I have that within my reach here. Or do I? Maybe I don't. Yeah, I do. 2011. So
2011. Okay.
Yeah, October 2011. It's as if, and honestly, like I knew that it wasn't going to be a great album, but I didn't think I would hate it as bad as I did.
I thought you were gonna surprise us with some kind words for like a track or two.
I thought so too, but it's not the case. It really, honestly, sounds like he was actively trying to make something that everybody hated. Like, it honestly seemed intentionally bad.
Can I just tell you the scenario in which I imagine Lou Reed and Metallica ended up collaborating?
Sure.
So I think they're probably like at a you know, very nice event, probably hosted by Laurie Anderson, like an art gallery thing. And Metallica's there, and Lou Reed is there, and Lou Reed comes up to Metallica and he's like, "Hey, we should make an album together, man." And Metallica's like, "Sure, Lou." And then the next morning, like the car picks up Metallica. It's like, "You committed to making this album."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it does sound like there was very little thought process involved in this at all. Um, and it's kind of interesting. Like when I say, it sounds like he was actively trying to make something hateable. Um, and an example of that, like one track 10, the final track on the album was like the one where it finally sounded like there was something interesting going on, like something that was engaging. Um, and the track goes on for 19 minutes and 30 seconds. So the one track that had like some potential was way too long to be enjoyable, because it was like enjoyable for a few minutes, but I can't, I couldn't hold on for 19 minutes and 30 seconds on the thing.
Hold on. Metallica's writing something in the chat comments. They're saying you're only telling us this now. It's not helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I don't know. I can see it happening. Like that part doesn't surprise me. The fact that it was released in a mainstream sort of way, that surprises me.
Well, yeah. Okay.
The fact that it was released by Warner Brothers, no less. That's hard to figure out. That's hard to understand. But yeah, I'll never get that time back. And unfortunately, that is the note. That's the last non-posthumous entry into his discography.
And in some ways, maybe that's kind of fitting because you definitely see a pattern in Lou Reed's solo career, especially where, something is really well liked and then he'll kind of do a 180 and I think the perfect example, maybe it's kind of a good bookend for like when he leaves RCA for the first time for Arista and has one more album in his contract, so he hands over Metal Machine Music, which have you ever listened to Metal Machine Music all the way through?
No, I kind of skimmed through it a little bit this past week just to have. I wanted to have everything fresh in my head. Like I said, with Velvet Underground stuff, there's no need to freshen it because it's so.
Yeah,
And
iconic. Yeah, totally.
yeah, and by the way, it
Canonical.
really didn't do me much good for the purpose of this show, but it was just kind of an exercise more than anything because I didn't come up with some surprise finds for my playlist or anything.
Oh yeah, I did. I really did. But
Oh, that's good.
just to clue in our listeners, Metal Machine Music, Lou Reed has one album left in his RCA contract, and he hands in this double album called Metal Machine Music, and it's really interesting. It's just guitar feedback. I think it's all of his stage amps in a loft run through pedals or maybe just feeding back upon themselves, but layering up into this like, some would say unlistenable and other people would say kind of like sculptural 15-minute slabs of music. And
Slab is an interesting word.
yeah, and I've had that album for like 20 years and I don't think I've ever been able to make it all the way through, but yeah, it is fun to kind of like pick your way through and scope it out.
Yeah,
So,
that is where Spotify comes in handy because I've never owned a copy of Metal Machine Music, but it because of Spotify, I was able to go back and not really fully listen to it or anything like that, but just to just to kind of confirm I guess, what I needed to confirm about it. Luckily, though, for RCA, they did still have Coney Island Baby set to go, so that officially was the last release of that era. But yeah, as far as Metal Machine music goes, though, I there aren't as many of those as in his solo catalog as you would think. I mean, definitely there's only one Metal Machine music, but going back and listening, there aren't many albums that I think are just kind of throwaway albums. Most of them are pretty interesting, if not really good.
Yeah, I think he, especially in the 80s, you can tell that he's putting a lot of money, getting a lot of like the best session players to play on his albums.
Hmm. Yeah, and the songs are always well, not always, but with rare exceptions, like the songs are always and I said always again. They're generally good quality. Like even in the eras where you think where certain art, because certain artists over a long career have their phone it in sort of periods. I would say Lou had a minimal amount of those.
Huh.
Yeah, and I think that would be like the general conception is that he had quite a few of those, but I don't really think so.
Yeah, I think he put a lot of attention into what he was doing, and he and I don't always connect on whether that results in a good album or not.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So yeah, let's I'm really curious about your playlist, dude.
Okay, so am I going first then?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm starting. I there is not a ton of variety in my list. There is some variety, but it is very heavy with loud guitars and vitriol. It is very centered on that, and so I would say less loud for my first track, but and less vitriol than comes on later. But definitely, I want to start with full on Lou Reed attitude. And so my first track is Wild Child from the self-titled solo debut. Um, just a song with super cool lyrics, super literary, as is his that's his mode. But yeah, very interesting, very engaging. Like from the get go, he's just painting an interesting scene that if it's the first page of a book you're reading, you're not going to put that book down anytime soon.
Yeah, I really enjoyed getting into that first self-titled Lou Reed album, which like I've never really paid a lot of attention to because I always kind of skip right to Transformer,
Hmm.
as a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a really cool pick, and uh, yeah, that's a fun song. I think for what I was kind of doing, I really I didn't exclude a lot of stuff. So we've got Velvet Underground there, but the first track I want to talk about is probably Tiger in the Tank by The Intimates. Do you know this one?
No, I don't. That one skipped by me.
Okay, well, so before Lou Reed, um, let's just have a moment. Okay, so Lou Reed starts playing music in, I guess, junior high, high school, plays in high school bands. Uh, he's kind of a rich kid, and he's got lots of rich kid friends, so he's got some opportunities to record when he's really young, and gets noticed in New York by this songwriting kind of factory called Pickwick. You're probably familiar with that, related to the tune "Do the Ostrich." But they're a bunch of one-off 7-inch singles before that, and one of them is this total like Beach Boys ripoff. I've got a tiger in my tank by the Intimates. It's a car song, and it even has like the I've got a '56 Chevy, do, 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 like the same kind of cadences, and it's totally it's a really fun tune. And the chorus is, I've got a tiger in my tank. And then they've got someone in the background going, roar. It's funny, but it's also kind of good. So it's not on Spotify as far as I know. I found it on YouTube.
Yeah, I see that. I did find it there.
And if you want to buy it on eBay, it's only $174.98. Unclear whether shipping is free or not.
Yeah, well, I guess if you're hardcore, you would do that. If you're not hardcore, you can just go to eBay or go to YouTube and listen to it for not exactly free, but basically.
Totes.
Yeah, I think I know a little from this period, but I do not know that one. Okay, so my number 2 track is from Chelsea Girl, the Nico album, and it is. I guess strictly speaking, it isn't the title track because the title of the album is Chelsea Girl. The title of the song is Chelsea Girls.
That is so
So
confusing.
that is confusing, but it is a great song, and it is written by Lou Reed. And I love that Nico album. I love the album Chelsea Girl, and I think I would have. It wouldn't have taken much, to get me to represent that in some way. So a good way to represent it is with the almost title track.
Yeah, cool. I love it. Yeah, it's such a weird artistic relationship that they found themselves in at that one brief period of time.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, and correct me, for any inaccuracies, but it's just they were a collaboration because Andy Warhol liked both of them and basically forced them to work together or coerce them into working together. With good results. It might not have been the most harmonious relationship, but good results.
I like your subtle dig at
And
both of
Andy
their kind
Warhol.
of like lack
Oh,
of vocal
chemistry.
prowess,
Yeah.
and that's something I really like about both artists. Uh, you don't like Nico. Did Nico ever sing the national anthem in public? Like a baseball game.
Well, would it have been our national anthem or hers?
I'm up for either, but what I'm trying to say is like she's not Whitney Houston, she's
Right.
not gonna hit all those
Yeah.
notes, but
Yeah. She's
I
not.
as you know, like I don't think that you have to. I think that some of the artists that I really follow and some of my own kind of like artistic uh guideposts are that just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, and I think it's especially this album where you appreciate that. If you don't if you don't totally love Nico because of her vocal limitations or whatever, I think this album could convert you. It's and also, by the way, Jackson Browne's finest moment. I think easily. Well, I shouldn't say easily because I'm sure I'll be offending some Jackson Browne fans or whatever. But great, great things from Jackson Browne on this. Some of the best tracks on here are Jackson Browne songs, and he played guitar on here as well. Um, but but yeah, I mean, if you are on the fence about Nico, you should definitely uh, check this album out.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good pick. Um, I guess looking at my list, I'm gonna have to. I think I'd like to group a bunch of them together because I've really got the same thing to say about a lot of these. Uh, and I think that kind of going back to Tiger in My Tank, I want to present to you, our fine listeners, and to you, Sean, my fine co-host, uh, the tracks "You're Driving Me Insane," um, "Your Love," and "Leave Her For Me." Let's see, I think "Your Love" and "You're Driving Me Insane" I think are under Lou Reed's name, and then I think "Leave Her For Me" is by the Jades, his first teenage band. But uh, you know, this kind of comes out later in some of his records, especially that there's that little uh, chunk of "Walk on the Wild Side." But Lou Reed, grew up and was really into doo-wop and that kind of Dion and the Belmonts 50s style. And all these tunes are pre-Velvet Underground, really rare singles that are available on YouTube that are really, really cool. They're so much fun. Like you remember, my collection of like Ricky Nelson 7 inches that we used to play in college. It really kind of gets that, uh, really, really tickles that thing for me.
That love
Um,
sick sort of feeling.
yeah, and like these like dopey teenage in love pop tunes are just gold. They're really good, and they've got all sorts of great things going on, like good and bad uh, female like harmony backup singers, and then King Curtis I think plays saxophone on one of these. That's kind of one of the reasons why a lot of people pay attention to it. And then you can also hear some kind of like you can hear him playing guitar. You can hear those kind of skittery chords that instantly say Velvet Underground to me. And then you have a tune that shows up in a lot of the origin stories of Velvet Underground, which is the Ostrich by the Primitives, which is so much fun. And from what I've read in different biographies, speaking of biographies, I would encourage everyone to read Lou Reed, A Life by Anthony de Curtis, which is really thorough and definitely not hagiographic. But in pretty much anything you read, he ends up at Pickwick, which is just a song factory churning out these like dollar bin knockoff hits. I have one that's super fun called "The Sounds of," I think it's called the Merseyside Sound by the Beats, and the Beats is in like the same typography as the Beatles.
Mm-hmm.
And the cover is like the same kind of art direction
Well,
as like Hard Day's Night.
as if it wasn't already already obvious what they're going for with that Mercy
Exactly,
side.
but yeah, if you're like a teenager and you're in like a hurry, I guess, or I don't know, you'd maybe conceivably pick it up because it kind of looks like a Beatles record, or you're in a hurry, you just do it by mistake. So, and when he's working in this song factory is when he meets John Cale and Tony Conrad and a few other people that show up in early iterations of the Velvet Underground. The Ostrich is just it's about 2 minutes 30, and it's it has the trademark Ostrich guitar tuning, so it's loud. It's like this kind of like proto punk rock uh thing, and it's just gold.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's one of those things that makes you wonder what Lou Reed this is the I guess internal conversation I have with myself um, about a lot of artists. There are many artists where you wonder what it would have been like if they were better singers. So if Lou Reed would have been a better singer, with just more of that sort of ability to be that doo-wop sort of artist, his whole music career would have been entirely different.
Yeah, totally. I'm just trying to think about who he wanted to be, and I think I kind of hit it on the head with Dion. Um, I think he wanted to be Dion, but he settled for being like, punk rock. So
Yeah, I mean, he became an iconoclast because he had to. I mean, if uh, if he would have found early success with that sort of music, that could have just taken him down an entirely different road. So it's I don't know. To me, that's always interesting to think about because a lot of artists start out trying to sound entirely different than what they're able to sound like, and eventually, I think they become more comfortable with what they actually do sound like, and um, they become more interesting as artists because of that.
totally.
All right, so since you group some, should I group some of mine or
Just
how,
follow your heart.
okay? Well, this one I think doesn't really work to group it. So my next song is Jesus, which was on the self-titled Velvet Underground, which was the third Velvet Underground album. There was Velvet Underground and Nico, then there was White Light, White Heat, and then Velvet Underground, then Loaded. Um,
And then Squeeze, but that's a whole other show.
right.
Whole other show.
That's yeah. That's when we celebrate Doug Yule's birthday. But
Yule Days. It's a multi-day
when
festival for
when
both Bobby and Doug.
yeah, when we throw the Yule log on the fire and
Uh-huh.
celebrate Yule days. Uh, I love the third album, and as it turns out, this is the only album that's represented on my list because it
I
was
Yeah, I love that record too. And just before the show, I always pull out a big stack of vinyl that we're going to be talking about, and I can't find my copy of the third
mm,
album on vinyl. I'm wondering, do I not even have it?
mm,
But
I
yeah,
I have like an original. I don't know if it's an original pressing, but I think it is. It's close to it. It's definitely one of the rarer records in my record collection. I don't have a ton, like I don't usually go after collector's items, but I did find like a really early pressing of that one once upon a time for a very reasonable price, so I couldn't pass it up. Um, but yeah, so definitely I would have represented. I would have had loaded heavily represented, but just trying to avoid the more well known stuff. And one of the guidelines I chose for myself is just not to have or have hardly anything that's on one of those. This is this is Lou Reed or the Velvet Underground playlist on Spotify because I know that that's what most people go to these days. You know, on the Spotify playlist, the Velvet Underground only had so many albums. So a 50 song Spotify playlist is going to contain just about everything, and it does contain Jesus. But I went ahead and included that on here.
yeah, that's such a yeah. What I like about that album is how quiet it is
Yeah,
and how pretty it is.
yeah. I always look at songs as to what time of year do I want to listen to this song? What time of year does it fit the best? That doesn't. That's not to say that I don't listen to it the rest of the year, but it the album and especially the song and also the song that I'll talk about a little bit later. It has that really late fall sort of feel to it, like the leaves are pretty much all off the trees and it's the air is very crisp and and it's just like on the verge of winter, and that to me is like where a lot of the Velvet Underground, where the third album fits in.
Wow. Very, very evocative. And yeah, I can totally hear that. And then I'll probably hear Autumn Sweater by Yola Tango after
That's yeah,
that.
that's and and not just because of the title either, but that is totally the right feel.
Yeah, wow, good pick. I like that tune a lot. You know, conflicted about the guy, but like the tune.
Well, I think whether you're religious or not, I think he was a pretty good dude.
Oh, we've got the chats blowing up.
I,
Uh,
I I think he was a good guy.
yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Totally smoted that fig tree when he was. But anyway, that's a whole
Yeah.
other podcast. But we've got kind of the complete opposite tune of Jesus when you go from that into Street Hassle, which breaks a lot of the rules that we set out. Um, we said that we wouldn't like. To me, Street Hassle is like a hit. It's
Well, yeah, no, I think it was fine. We did discuss this last week, and I think it
I give you
my
fair warning.
yeah my thought was that it's fair game because for one thing, it's what 11 minutes plus.
I think it probably varies on different editions. Spotify's telling me it's 10:59.
Okay, still that's it's hard to consider that a hit at that length of time. Um,
I guess one of my gateways into really liking Lou Reed is picking up a used copy when I was a kid of is it Between Thought and Expression, the Lou Reed box set.
yeah, yep. That was actually I think that was the first Lou Reed solo thing I ever owned. It wasn't I had Velvet Underground stuff before that. I thought that box set was going to be my perfect introduction into Lou Reed because I found a used copy of it, and it wasn't really the best place to start, I don't think.
It's
But
a really interesting collection because yeah, it's not a great place to start because and you'll read about this in the DeCurtis rock and roll biography of Lou Reed that the gentleman who was putting it together put a lot of thought into a lot of alternate cuts that were just totally spanning Lou Reed's career up until that point. I think it came out in the early 90s, I would say. And he had to run it by Lou Reed like the night before it was supposed to go to press. And Lou Reed looks at the track listing and is like, "Oh, this is unacceptable, man." And then makes a bunch of calls to his management and the label and takes it away from the guy who's curating it. And so all the tunes that show up on that are curated by Lou Reed. That's why I think you have like 3/4 of the album Berlin on that
yeah,
compilation, which makes no sense at all. But one of the tracks that always really stood out for me was Street Hassle. And Street Hassle is really pretty. It's based on this almost like a chamber quartet loop, and it goes everywhere that a Lou Reed song will often go, with drugs and ODing and and then the dealer said, that kind of thing. And but while it's talking about these really gritty things, it's a really beautiful song. I love everything about it. I love that there are some electric guitars in there. I'm hearing them now, but it's it's a really timeless song, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It sounds like it could have been from the 50s, or it could be something that came out yesterday.
yeah. You know what I like thinking about the first time I ever heard that. The thing that blew me away, really surprised me, is that I think at about minute 9 is when Springsteen comes in on it.
What?
Yeah,
No
and
way.
it's like
Stop the podcast. I got to listen to this.
it just I was totally stunned by like you think the song is this, but then Bruce Springsteen comes in at almost the last minute and just threw me for a loop. Just total, not a left turn, but kind of a left turn, a bit
What
of a
is it? What
left
does
turn.
he do in the song?
It's just kind of a spoken word thing. So you're not even you're not even familiar with this?
No, I had no idea the boss was there.
Oh yeah, yeah. So he comes in and just does a little spoken word thing, and I don't know if he's delivering something that Lou Reed wrote or if it's something that he wrote. Uh, I don't know if I'd be able to find that out really quick, but I don't know if he. I guess if I see that he has a songwriting credit, then I'll know.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
there's no songwriting credit, so apparently they're not Springsteen's words, but yeah, I mean it's
around the 9 minute mark.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the first time you hear that, it's like what, like because at first it's not even something you're certain that it's Springsteen at first because it's so unusual and so unexpected, but then he mentions Born to Run and yeah, it's totally surprising to me the first time I remember the first time hearing that and just being like, what?
I could see Bruce maybe not advertising that too much because one of the barriers of getting into the Lou Reed uh, solo catalog, especially a few parts in this song and a few other tracks that I just had to kind of bail on my list, is that there are some attitudes that just don't really stand up, especially in talking about women, that are really jarring these days.
Yeah,
I could see Bruce not being like, check out my new single, Street Hassle. It's about a guy and his girlfriend. The girlfriend ODs.
yeah. I mean, there are the I know what you're referring to, but there are, and maybe we're not thinking of the same moments, but there are a lot of moments too where, when he's talking about his relationships, where he doesn't seem proud of the things that he's saying. It's just that he's being candid about it. So I don't know. I guess we'd have to look at specific examples to know that to even know if we're thinking of the same things, same moments.
Well, there you go. Street Hassle.
Yeah. So yeah, there's Street Hassle. Uh, so just because you mentioned Berlin made me think of something because I don't have anything from Berlin on my list. Do you have anything on yours?
I do like a few songs on there. One of which I briefly had on my list, which is "Kids."
Well, that was the one I wanted to talk about. So I almost had "Oh Jim" on my list, but
Yeah.
just didn't make the cut.
Well,
Um,
I had to. I really had to bail on that one because I don't have a lot of rules about what people should record, or but
yeah.
but I do
Well,
know that anytime you put a crying baby on a record, it's a bad idea.
yeah, and well, the I think the story goes that that's the producers' kids that are being recorded.
Bob Ezrin.
Yeah, and he I think told them a lie or something like that. I don't
Oh,
remember
I read
exactly
about
what he
that.
told
Yeah, I
them.
don't. Oh, that makes me feel gross. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah.
it
I
the
would have to.
go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'd have to go back to know what he said because I don't remember what he told them.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, there are a few artists that I totally respect and follow, like Stevie Wonder, who have violated the putting a crying kid on a record. Rule, famously with Stevie with "Isn't She Lovely," which is kind of sweet, but like, please no. um, so, what song from Berlin? I interrupted
Okay.
your train of thought completely.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about kids because one of the things I was listening to a lot of the live albums over the past week, and I don't remember which live album this was, but it, it was you know how in concerts, especially quieter concerts, you hear the first few chords of a song, and then there's that recognition applause that comes from the audience.
Uh-huh.
Well, the opening lyrics to the song "Kids" are they're taking her children away. So as soon as he says they're taking her children away, that recognition applause comes from the audience. And
That's so
it just
weird.
sounds like
Huh.
everybody's so relieved
All
that they've
right.
taken her kids away.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about time they took those kids away from her.
Wow. Dark place. You end up going to some dark places with Lou Reed, and I like that about, especially when I was a kid and kind of naive, like a naive kid in Iowa. Like listening to like a Lou Reed or a Velvet Underground record. Just feels like kind of something you're not supposed to do. It feels kind of dangerous.
Well, like I look at it like I think is kind of intended in a lot of ways. It's
Oh yeah.
like reading certain books. There's certain books you read where I don't know. At least this is how I approach it. Is that yeah, this isn't really the life that I would be living or wanting to live, but it's reality, and it's I don't know. It's just one of those things where being interested in it doesn't mean um, that you're enjoying the pain of these people. It just means that you um, you feel like it's important to know these things, and you're interested in the lives of other people. I don't feel like there's any sort of um, it's not Schadenfreude, and it's not interested, it's not being interested in anybody being exploited. It's more, like it's not like a reality TV sort of thing.
I like it because, yeah, I do think, I read a lot, and enjoy some kind of difficult books and some kind of difficult movies here and there where, yeah, every story doesn't have to be a love story.
Yeah.
And I think that that's, I guess, the best way to put it about Lou Reed, toggling between, okay, I really love the song Shiny Happy People by REM, but then I also really like Street Hustle. And they're
Yeah,
talking about different things.
and there's definitely a line, and I would say Lou probably crossed the line a few times. But yeah, it's you know
Well,
I guess there are certain artists that you trust with that sort of thing, and he is one of the artists that I always trusted with that sort of uh, material.
well said. Um, yeah, well, let's move on to your next pick.
Okay, well, now is when we get into the vitriol and the loud guitars.
Okay, bring
Um,
it on.
my first selection in this vitriol section is not a Lou Reed song, but a Bob Dylan song that Lou Reed recorded for the 30th anniversary Bob Dylan concert celebration at Madison Square Garden, I think in '92. Um, and so one of those things that I've always loved it. Like, I remember watching this on public TV. Um, and everything about this whole concert was just cool to me. Almost everything. I guess I didn't love every single person that was part of it, but most of them, which you would figure. But Booker T and the MGs were the house band, so that was kind of cool in itself to see Booker T and the MGs
Oh yeah.
be the band that plays with everybody, and it ended up being Neil Young. ended up going on tour with them because of the amazing chemistry that
Right.
they had.
And then you get Are You Passionate? Yeah.
Yeah, which didn't end up being a good album, unfortunately. But the it started a great tour, and the Neil, although I don't want to get I talk about Neil all the time, and I don't want to get sidetracked on that, but
Uncle Neil.
Uncle Neil, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, Lou covered "Foot of Pride," and that was the only track that was on the release. I don't know if that was the only song that he performed in the concert, but it was a song not released. I don't remember when Dylan did it originally, but it was never released on a Dylan album until the first bootleg collection set. And Lou totally made it. It totally sounds like a Lou Reed song. Just made it his own. Just sounds great, and has that fire and attitude, and vitriol is really the word.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that song. And looking forward to checking out your playlist on Spotify, Left of the Dial podcast. Yeah, I can.
Suggested reading.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll match you with another like super loud, fun song. Did you get into the album The Blue Mask during your research?
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, I think Waves of Fear is a song that I don't think I think I've maybe heard this record once in my life and then heard it again and it's wow, that's a really cool standout track. It reminds me a lot of John Cale's writing. I guess you could kind of group it with that song "Fear is a Man's Best Friend," and some of his like louder recordings. Probably not just 1919, but and you've got Robert Quine
Yep.
on one track of guitar, Lou Reed playing on another track of guitar, and each guitar is mixed to one ear, which is really interesting because they're using different tunings. But yeah, just a solid 4 minute rock song that doesn't sound dated. It's crunchy. It's got a great groove to it. I love Waves of Fear. So if you haven't heard that, I mean, I try to check out other things on the Blue Mask.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the title track. I considered that, although it, being the title track and being the selection that's on the Spotify playlist, I veered away from it.
I had no idea. Yeah.
But yeah, totally love the title track.
Yeah, tell me more. What else you got?
All right. Well, the next two I'll group together because it's a continuation of the dressing down. That Lou was so great at. First track is Straw Man from New York, and New York is really like a top. I think a top 5 Lou Reed album, even including Velvet Underground albums. I think. Just loved that album, and could have gone with any number of songs from it. Dirty Boulevard and Halloween Parade, I think, are the more well-known songs. So, and those probably would have been my first two choices. And just if you're trying to give somebody a Lou Reed overview, I would go with those two first from that album. But I went with Straw Man here because it's another really great, loud, angry, bitter sort of Lou Reed song, which sounds so great. And also the live version that was on the deluxe New York set that came out last year, kind of toggled between going with one or the other, and just went with the studio track from the album. And then Dirt from Street Hassle, which is kind of like the Modern Lovers' Pablo Picasso, if that was a really bitter angry song. So take that comparison for what you will. But yeah, if that song were really bitter and angry, then you'd have Dirt from Street Hassle.
Nice. Yeah, and yeah, the timing of that record coming out in late 70s. You know, I never really get like Lou Reed was at CBGB's a lot, and you have lots of stories about you know, him coming up to Talking Heads and kind of buttonholing them and being like, "You guys are coming back to my apartment until 6 in the morning. You're gonna watch me eat ice cream, and I'm gonna tell you about the industry." You know, you have lots of those stories, but I don't think he ever really figured out punk rock, um, and that's okay because
Or did he?
I mean, it's one of those things where once you kind of invent something and then you see what it is, you know, you become self-conscious of it. I believe it's
Mhm.
called like the Baroque period if you're talking about like art, but
Yeah, you know what's funny to think about is that period of time where yeah, he's playing CBGBs or he's playing Max's Kansas City or whatever. Like these are all just small little venues. It's especially CBGBs. It's just kind of interesting to think about um, just seeing people like that. You know, like when they weren't just up and comers. You know, they're pretty well known, but just playing all these small venues all the time throughout New York.
yeah, it was kind of a magical uh point in time, but I'm glad that happened for some people, uh but I want to kind of veer away from so yeah, he's Velvet Underground are kind of like the you know Velvet Underground, Stooges, Modern Lovers. Like those are a lot of the bands that for me kind of invent punk rock. And then when he's kind of in the thick of it, let's see. I think the Bells. What year is that from? Like 1980 ish,
I will find out. That was 79.
79. So you have Lou Reed who's trying to you know keep his ear to the ground um and helping out these upstarts like Talking Heads and whomever else. But then you have, and I do like this song. I'm not just dunking on Lou Reed, but did you listen to Disco Mystic?
Uh, yes, yes. I'm not. It's not fresh in my head, but I do remember that I listened to it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so bad in a good way, or is it
Yeah,
good in a bad way? I don't know.
I, I do recall that. It's not Lulu bad, but it's yeah.
It's really good. It's we've talked about this track before, Love on the Beat by Serge Gainsbourg. Um like it's not classic, it's not good, but it's really fun, you know. Disco, disco mystic. And it's got like the, you know, la da da, like the really cheesy synth line going on. Oh, it's so good, you got to check it out. But then on the same album you have a couple other really nice tracks like City Lights is a nice little like 3 minute kind of like ode to walking around New York at night. And then the Bells, I think, is like kind of a cool companion track to Street Hassle. Like both are approximately the same length. They're about, you know, 10 minutes long. And the Bells is so cool because I don't think you even have vocals come in until 6 minutes into it. And it's this building kind of synthy thing. It sounds like it could be on Station to Station by David Bowie. And I really like that he's got a really pretty interesting song that's only about 3 minutes long, but it's got a 7 minute like giant keyboards and operatic kind of synth saxophones building up to it.
So the interesting thing about the Bells as an album is There's only one track that is solely written by Lou Reed. Everything's a collaboration, and three of the songs are collaborations with Nils Lofgren.
That guy is everywhere. Yeah.
I know. He's just, first with Neil, and then I guess Lou second, and then Bruce after that.
Yeah. I think he like he'll just show up, at your recording session, and I think he's a really nice guy probably. And so it's like, well, he's got all of his stuff. We should probably let him in, I suppose.
He's got moxie. That's what
Yeah.
he's got.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Just there's some kind of undeniable thing about Nils that he can work his way in.
Yeah, I bet he's just like a really fun guy to be around. He's got really good anecdotes.
I bet he does now if he didn't back then. He certainly must. He's lived a really interesting life.
Yeah. Wowza. So yeah, those are the tracks that I really like from the Bells. So I'll hand it back over to you, but I don't think it's a great album, but definitely go in for Disco Mystic, City Lights, and the title track.
Yeah, it wasn't a standout album for me, but
well, once this pandemic is over and you have your big party post-pandemic, you're gonna need Disco Mystic first. You're gonna need that jam.
Just put do Disco Mystic on the Wheels of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my next track is I think, yeah, well, I mean, unless you count Nico, I suppose you could count the Nico one as a collaboration. But yeah, the next track on my my list is a collaboration with Gorillaz, with Lou Reed, and that's Some Kind of Nature from the Gorillaz album Plastic Beach.
Oh, good one, deep cut.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely could have. There are a lot of collaborations with Lou Reed. Like I could have easily made a list of those if I wanted to. It really seems like when you go through them all, that you could basically get Lou Reed to go in the studio and record with you if you covered one of his songs. Like there are many versions of Perfect Day out there that Lou Reed actually joined in with the person covering the song. So I guess, while that was going on, if you wanted Lou Reed on your album, all you had to do was cover one of his songs and you could get him.
Right. Okay. So Duran calls him up and they'll have the jet ready.
Well, they did do a cover on Thank You. I don't remember what song did they do? Did they do Perfect Day?
Sure it's Perfect Day, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember. I remember that being an okay album actually, but I don't think I like that track.
I really like a couple of songs from that record a lot.
Yeah,
some of which we will cover next week on our Covers for Lovers Elvis Costello.
Well, maybe 2 weeks. I got to talk to you about that.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So it might be 2 weeks.
Might be 2 weeks.
Listening. I have a suggestion for next week.
Okay.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll do that offline. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, Gorillaz is really fun. And my question for you is, yeah, Lou Reed collaborated with a lot of people. Did he ever end up collaborating with Laurie Anderson?
He did. Let me see if I don't know off the top of my head what the track was, but I know he did.
Laurie Anderson being a really amazing artist, and also Lou Reed's partner, maybe wife, for the last
wife-ish
decade of his life.
Yeah, I think officially a wife, right? I think they're officially married.
Oh,
common law, if nothing else, common law.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. I know there's a track that he did do a collaboration.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you. Good track. I only included one Velvet Underground track in my Lou Reed collection, and I don't think I've really paid this track a lot of time, a lot of attention. It's from the album Another View. Are you familiar with that album?
I don't know.
Okay, well, there were a lot of recordings that happened in between the self-titled record and Loaded, and I think some of them ended up being kind of like set aside for singles that never happened. Um, and those end up on the album VU, which you probably have, right?
Hmm.
And another collection the next year, 1986, is called Another View. And the recording quality isn't as good, which is kind of what I like about it. But there are a couple really fun, uh, kind of loud songs. One of them is called Coney Island Steeplechase. And it sounds like Lou Reed's vocal is maybe just like a scratch take, or maybe it was recorded on, like a tape recorder under Robert Quine's armpit or something. Uh, it's really fun, and then it's kind of a one-two punch with Coney Island Steeplechase, and then the instrumental version of "Guess I'm Falling in Love," which is just a total romp. You got to check that out if you haven't already. So definitely like investigating some of the fuzzier uh, unreleased bits of that group. As much as I love the group, we had Loaded on last night, and definitely love going back to that album.
Hmm.
And we had a little bit of a in our production offices here at Left of the Dial. we had we had kind of a last minute meeting because I just a brief aside about Loaded, if you don't mind. Do we have time for that?
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird transition record where um a lot of the like pretty much 50% of the band are the Yule brothers during this recording. So Doug Yule and Bobby Yule, and you have Doug Yule singing lead, and it's really hard to pick this out because I think he's doing a really amazing Lou Reed impression. But
Yeah, that is the thing I liked about Doug Yule, is that he sounds close to Lou Reed. So singing Lou Reed, it sounds very appropriate, but he can sing certain things that Lou can't. Like he has a bit more range and just general singing ability. Like "Oh Sweet Nothing" is not going to sound as nice with Lou actually singing it. It doesn't sound that far from Lou to have Doug Yule singing it though, so that it kind of works
right,
perfectly.
yeah, it's kind of Doug Yule getting the Lou Reed intonation, the classic Lou Reed intonation down. So yeah, he sings lead on "Oh Sweet Nothing," "Lonesome Cowboy Bill," "New Age," and "Who Loves the Sun."
Hmm.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So Laurie Anderson, the Laurie Anderson album "Bright Red," Lou collaborates on this track "In Our Sleep." So there you
Okay,
go.
thank you for that. I'm gonna look that up. I'm gonna listen to that tonight.
Yeah. All right. My next song is the second cover on my list. It is a cover of "This Magic Moment" that was contributed to the soundtrack of Lost Highway, and I guess this goes back to that whole doo-wop sort of thing. Like that was always a big thing with him, even much later into his career. But the way he does it here, it definitely sounds it sounds like the blend of what that song was originally intended for. With Lou Reed, like there's just a total synthesis there between those two things. They aren't at odds with each other. It really works really great.
Okay. Coughing break there. Yeah, good pick. That's a fun soundtrack. I remember a lot of good or interesting music being on that. That was kind of like a big teen soundtrack among my teen crowd.
Mm. The hip teen crowd.
I don't know if we were hip, but we're doing our thing. Um, So yeah, good pick, and definitely looking forward to. I don't think I've listened to that cover for a really long time. Um, so I'm going to group a few more tunes in, and I want to talk about how much. Talk again about how much I really, really liked the much maligned at the time, and I think kind of obscure now. Self-titled Lou Reed solo debut,
Mm.
which has some really interesting session players on it. I was reading the backup players are pretty much a bunch of guys from the band Yes, so that's pretty interesting. But
Yeah,
the
Steve Howe, no less, plays on it.
yeah,
Rick Wakeman, Steve Howe. I don't know if there's anybody else from Yes on here, but those are the big ones. Getting Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman. Um, yeah, that is, and it's not a proggy record by any stretch either. Um, it doesn't border on prog. It's not really prog in any way. But
you can hear some really nice clean playing though, and
yeah,
the two tracks that really stood out to me are "Love Makes You Feel" and "I Love You," and both have some really you know pretty acoustic little lead lines and stuff, and it's nice to hear. I've read that these tunes are maybe songs that he wrote for Velvet Underground, but I like to
yeah.
think that at this point in life, he's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna kind of start over, and there are no rules about whether it needs to be like this edgy, like city, kind of narrative or anything. So it's fun
By the
to
way,
it's fun to hear him just write a song called "I Love You" and have it be like a really sweet tune.
yeah, which that was a song that would have been. A lot of these are songs that would have been on Loaded, if Loaded was like a double album, I suppose. Love makes I Love You, Right Into the Sun, which now I'm looking at it. I omitted that from my playlist because I looked at something that didn't give him a songwriting credit, but I'm looking at this page now and it does give him a songwriting credit as well as the rest of the Velvet Underground. So I probably should add it back to my list.
You
Um,
probably should. Yeah.
Ocean would have been unloaded. Uh, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of leftovers. Well, and some songs that did get released on Velvet Underground albums.
Yeah, Ocean seems like a real companion to New Age for me.
Mm-hmm.
Ha, yeah, wow, good tunes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna add Right Into the Sun back to my list. Um, all right, so I'm gonna group a couple here. The first one is Legendary Hearts, which is the next two are both title tracks to their respective albums. Legendary Hearts was an album that let me see what year that came out. That was 83. So the next two are both from the same era, and both tracks that I think you would go into this expecting this to be a dead spot, an artistic dead spot, because that's just kind of how things went for most of the contemporaries of Lou Reed in the 80s. David Bowie,
Ouch.
Iggy,
Ouch.
among many others. It was just a very common thing for those who were big in the 70s to kind of hit a rut in the 80s. But I like a lot of the stuff from this time period. It's not his best, I'm not saying that, but a lot of really good stuff. And so I have Legendary Hearts, and then I have New Sensations. New Sensations came out the year after, and totally love New Sensations. Also has I Love You, Suzanne, which was just totally a stab at a pop hit, which I think it could have been. Probably things didn't really work out. And
Oh,
but
there's got to be a music video, right?
oh yeah. I don't know. I don't remember it, but I know there is one. Um, but yeah, New Sensations has a really cool guitar progression, chord progression that just makes for a great hook to it. And it is one of many songs about riding on a motorcycle by Lou. He loved the motorcycles, which I think the first time I ever saw Lou Reed in my life was on a motorcycle. Like he had a motorcycle commercial, which I think was for Honda, and I didn't really know anything about Lou Reed other than he was on a motorcycle commercial, and you know, but I think that was enough to put him on my radar, though.
Yeah, that was yeah, definitely a thing once he cleans up starting I think after Coney Island Baby, and towards the end of his life is really into Tai Chi, and but yeah, definitely has his motorcycle riding phase. And yeah, I dug into this record a little bit too, and I found some gold. And it I don't want to step on your track though.
Oh, what do you mean by
Oh,
stepping on it?
I don't want to move on to my track if you're not.
Oh, well, I guess the
Tell
other
me
thing
tell me more, Sean.
the other thing I'll mention about this album, so it's something that we talked about a little bit. I think on the Neil show, because I was talking about how I filled in my discography at Cheapo Records. So back in the day, this was also the album New Sensations was also something I bought at Cheapo Records for
I think it's
probably,
still a cutout staple.
yeah, I think it was probably a $2 or $3 purchase. Um, so yeah, Cheapo Records, totally. I would have to say it's a huge influence because there were so many albums like that where just at $2 or $3, I didn't have to know anything about the album going in other than I thought it was a good artist. So I would just get something like that. It's like, well, I know I like Lou Reed, so I'm just going to check this out and see if the album's any good.
Totally, yeah. And same thing for me. There was a nice shop in my old neighborhood in Portland called Music Millennium, and I think if I look through, I'm looking at the thumbnails of all these Lou Reed solo albums, and I have probably like half of them from Music Millennium that Berlin for like $4 or something, and you just kind of wake up one day and you have like almost the entire Lou Reed solo catalog on vinyl for the cool price of like $23.
Yeah, and yeah. And then when you
Yeah.
move and you have to move all of that, then you wonder if
Oh
it was
man.
worth it. But then you decide, yes, it was worth it.
Yeah, I think the last time I moved with my records, those made the cut. The Gray Slick solo albums did not make the cut.
Right? Yeah, you do have to cut bait.
Yep. But yeah, I went back to this record a little bit, uh, and I really like the last track, The Great Defender, down at the arcade, which,
Hmm.
you know, kind of, I don't know. I could say what he was trying to do with this song, but I don't want to appear cynical, but
Yeah, I know. I know exactly what you're talking
but
about.
I
I'm
think
pretty
I think
sure I
it's
do.
like, all these movies have kids at the arcade, man. I'm gonna write the song, and
He's
so he's
trying
like,
to relate.
yeah, trying to relate to the kids, trying to do something hip that's maybe gonna end up in like, I think they'll play it in the movie War Games, trying to be of the moment, um, and I like how misguided it is.
It's nice that that's one track on the album and not the whole album, though.
You're right. You're right. But I do like, the rest of the album doesn't do a lot for me, but this one really bad song does a lot for me. I don't know why.
I really like New Sense. I like the title track, and I do like "I Love You, Suzanne," even though it's not what you think of as Lou Reed. But
Well, Flick, once this pandemic is over, I may just bequeath my vinyl copy to you. So
well, I
we'll
still
see.
have
We'll
I
see.
still have the original one I bought, but You can go ahead if you want, though. I won't turn it
Oh,
down.
okay. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, that's really fun, and I don't know if I would have ever listened to that track again in my life if we weren't doing this show. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Um, and then there are a couple other just like ones and twos here that I think every Lou Reed album, probably with the exception of Lulu and maybe The Raven, has at least one good track on it. And another one that really stood out for me from Between Thought and Expression was always the track Kicks from Coney Island Baby. It's a weird track. There's lots of like kind of like studio, like dialogue recorded in the studio as kind of a layer in the music, but it's got that Velvet Underground groove and guitar, and yeah, it's fun. It has what we refer to in the music industry as demo magic. Like I would imagine that he found a groove with his band and they rolled tape, and this was take one.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if Lou was often down for many take 11s or so on. Kind of feel like take one was often the one.
I think between him, I would say the most positive thing about agreeing to that is that, yeah, like everyone that's in the studio with him and behind the boards, especially in the 70s and 80s, are like the best guys you can get.
Yeah. But also, it's just sometimes it's just about chemistry too. Because I'm going to talk about Uncle Neil again. Um, like Crazy Horse aren't technically the best players in the world, but they have that connection that they make, and so like he was a guy that always went for take one and really just hated the idea of doing a bunch of takes of the same song.
Yeah, Crazy Horse is legend. Yeah, they can't go wrong.
Yeah. But there I go again. So so back to Lou. Uh, so Ecstasy, which came out in 2000, is another album that I think you're probably just figuring that's one you skip over. But I think it's a lot better than it's a lot better than that. It's definitely one worth checking out. Not the ultimate Lou Reed stuff. Like I would say. The definitely in that later period, New York is like the must listen for me. It's one of his best ever, but there's a lot of other things throughout that I think are worth checking out, and Ecstasy is one of those. And the track that I have on my list is Big Sky, which is a little bit, it's a lot the same, but a little bit different. Like I think it's more anthemic than most Lou Reed songs. It's more positive. It's more I guess it's safely more uplifting than most Lou Reed songs. They don't tend to go that way. I guess that's another reason why I put New Sensations on here too. Is it's more of a positive song. Um, but yeah, Big Sky is really really loud and big as the title suggests, and yeah, it's my penultimate song here on my list.
Oh, nice. I like that tune a lot. Thank you for bringing that to my attention.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I forgot about that record. Uh, yeah, so I've got just one more tune that I really want to talk about. And it is not even the whole tune, but it starts around 13 minutes and 30 seconds into side 4 of Metal Machine Music. And and I I I do
And
I do really like it. Um, and I like that he was audacious enough to be like, here's my new album, RCA, And if you don't know anything about this record, we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's all just like really interesting layered guitar feedback. But it's become kind of a cult record for a lot of people that think of it as kind of like maybe a precursor to no wave. And
It's a tough
also
it's a
people,
tough hang for
yeah,
sure.
it's a tough hang. Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be on the sticker when you
Right.
buy it. But it's a little bit misleading because Lou Reed is looking like totally a tough rock and roll dude on the cover, wearing a leather jacket, and I guess a lot of people bought this in like Sears or wherever else, and Woolworths for $2.99, and
So
then put it on the platter, and we're like, oh,
yeah.
I'm not feeling it.
So this is a theory, not based on any facts at all.
Go for it.
Uh, so the way he looks on the cover of Metal Machine Music looks like it could have been the inspiration for the Terminator. Like he really looks like a prototype for the Terminator.
Yeah, and there's like this blue light over his forehead that I always thought was like face paint, kind of like the Charlize Theron character in Mad Max, uh, with the leather jacket, and he's kind of like his hands are kind of like he's a gunslinger too, like about to reach for a pistol. So totally cool record cover, and then this like weird, impenetrable, weird, fun, loud record.
Yeah.
But if you get to around 13 minutes in side 4, you enter into uh I guess if you were to label it in symphonic terms, it would be somewhere between a reprise and a scherzo, where it ends up cycling through these really chunky low tones in a really fun loop. I think if DJ Bonebreak were on the show, the drummer from X, he would say like, "Oh yeah, that's interesting because one loop is like one loop is in 3/5 against another loop that's I think 4/6 or something like that." Um, so yeah, there are people who take this album very seriously. A lot of people that, which probably includes me, that like it as kind of a novelty that you throw on or talk about with your friends to impress them. And then there are other people that are like, oh yeah, well this makes a lot of sense because if you look at the musical lineage, especially of John Cale and then a lot of other people that were huge in the Velvet Underground story, you can't talk about them without talking about Lamont Young and some of the other avant-garde composers and John Cage and happenings that were going on in New York City at the time.
Yeah, it's if nothing else, it was something that happened.
It was well, that record happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you
Um,
can't deny that it
it
exists, and
exists. Yeah, it does exist. We have proof. Um, I think I just read this somewhere as reputable as like maybe Wikipedia, that in an interview, um, he's having a back and forth with somebody about Metal Machine Music, and he asked the reporter like, "Oh, you made it to side 4?" And the reporter's like, "Yeah, I listened all the way through side 4." And Lou Reed says, "Well, you're dumber than me then." So, you know,
meaning he didn't even make it to side 4.
I don't think he ever listened to it. Yeah. So,
Well, yeah, I don't think he probably ever listened to it, but he did have to be on it. He had to make it.
I think he recorded it and then just shipped the tapes. When they're like, "Do you want to approve the master?" He's like, yeah." And then he just like didn't open the package.
Yeah, well, and it does give some credence to the premise that, like I don't know. I wasn't there. I was never in Lou Reed's head, but the idea that that the impression I had anyway, that Lulu was something that he was actively trying to make something that everybody hated. Uh, yeah, I mean, it could just be could be overtones of Metal Machine music too.
I think that's our first theatrical collaboration is like Lou Reed when he's about to approve the production masters for Metal Machine music. It's kind of like a little bit Great Jones Street by Don DeLillo. Yeah, thank you for indulging me, kind listeners of Left of the Dial podcast.
Okay, well, my final track, I went a different route than you did. I went with probably the most, I would assume the most well-known song on my list, but just maybe not well-known enough, and that's why I decided to include it.
The suspense flick.
Yeah, it's I'm Set Free from the self-titled Velvet Underground album, third album. I don't know, it's just one of his all-time best, and it wasn't really the point of the list to just do a focus on what are his best all-time things. But I think this is lesser known enough that it fits in, but also it's my last track because I think it's the best track on here, and it's one of the best things they ever did.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really, really good way to end it. And yeah, I like that eventually Lou Reed, became an icon and successful. The tragedy of the Velvet Underground is that when they were at their peak, they were playing roller rinks in like, Cincinnati, and their records you couldn't sell a Velvet Underground record if you were a record company. So this is a really cool survey of, he never, I don't think he went more than like a year or two without putting out records, was always doing something interesting, even if it wasn't always, in my opinion, like really listenable. And yeah, this was so much fun, Flick. I really am grateful to you for putting this idea out there.
Yeah, well, you are welcome. Glad to do this with you, and glad to explore Lou Reed. Maybe I don't know. Like I've spent a whole major portion of my life listening to Lou Reed and Velvet Underground music, but it was kind of nice to, when you look back and do something like this, you realize, well, there's still some stuff I haven't listened to. There wasn't much, but there was, and some of it was Lulu. A big portion of it was Lulu, which I'm never going to go back to that.
Yeah, if I run into those guys at a Giants game, I'm just not going to bring it up.
I think I would. I there are some questions I have for sure.
Okay, because yeah. Well, next time I see Lars, I'll I hear he's pretty approachable.
He seems approachable.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that has been episode 74 of the Left of the Dial podcast.
And it was so much fun. Let's talk about what goes on next week. Flick.
Okay, so we do have an Elvis Costello show in the works. So I don't know if that will be next week or the week after. What I was thinking for next week, because it's St. Patrick's Day. So if I'm going to throw this out there, and if we don't do it, then I guess I'm going to edit this. But anyway, we'll be doing an Elvis Costello show coming up. For next week, I was thinking we do. Last year we did an Irish bands playlist show for St. Patrick's Day, and so I was thinking we could do like a volume 2 since it was a show that you weren't here for last year, and I can you can basically do whatever you want for your Irish bands playlist, and I will just try to include songs that I didn't do a year ago. Okay,
sounds good. Looking forward to it. I think I'm, according to my genealogy report, about 27% Irish. So you're going to get the real deal. So
there you go.
Watch out.
more authentic than I think we have been to this point. So yeah, I guess we'll do that the next week, St. Patrick's Day playlist, and in 2 weeks, Elvis Costello.
Okay, that is a plan. Listeners, thank you again. Be awesome to one each other. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in.
And party on, dudes.
Flick, it's always a pleasure to nerd out with you and talk about cool music. So we'll do it again next week. This is Richard Shirk in Oakland, California. See you when I see you.
And this is Flick in beautiful Des Moines, where it was in the 70s today.
Wow, spring break.
That's right. We'll see you next week on the LOTD pod.